FMSystems, and welcome to another great topic here on Fora, joined by Brian McDonald, who's the Director of Digital Marketing over at FMSystems. Brian, welcome to Fora. Appreciate you joining.
Thanks for having me, Peter. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, maybe before we kick off, if you don't mind, maybe just giving a recap on your background and your journey through digital marketing.
Sure. So I went to school at NC State and studied PR and communication. Did a lot of different marketing, traditional marketing early on, everything from events planning to collateral, a little bit of PR in there as well. And then kind of about 10, 15 years ago, started getting more onto the digital side. I'd done some website development and e-commerce, and then started getting more into paid search when it started getting around SEO, content strategy, and social as that kind of mixed in. So over the past about 5 or 6 years, I've worked for several software service companies, and I've enjoyed that. A lot of times starting it from the ground up, as far as digital, and other times kind of coming in and building out the digital beyond kind of the base that's been built. So currently I've been at FMSystems for about 3 months. So it's a great team. It's a exciting product line kind of as we get into the hybrid workspace and everything that's coming out of COVID. We offer a lot of great solutions out there.
That's great. So FMSystems, so it's for facilities management, and who is it that you're typically selling to there? Like, what is what's the persona of the person you're targeting?
So it's kind of a mix. So it's typically a facility manager or someone in, say, space and real estate management. But we also kind of touch upon HR and IT professionals, especially I think with hybrid workforce and people getting back to work and concerns around safety and security more so than I think we had prior to COVID.
Right.
So it really kind of depends, but so sometimes it may be that the real estate management person is managing that for all their tenants, and other times it might be a large enough tenant has that person in place that's going to handle it, maybe in conjunction with the facility manager on the building owner.
Okay. So how has COVID impacted it? We hear a lot about, obviously, like home improvement stores really, booming because people are going, sitting around their house and wondering what they can do to improve their house. It's similar now that people are moving back into the office and into that hybrid world where people are starting to rethink how they're managing their own facilities.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, whereas it may have been something that was nice to have in the past, people are starting to see the value. It's much easier to kind of express that value proposition to them. They understand it.
Right.
So for instance, we used to do, we in our space management and our kind of room booking management and such, we could do things like contact tracing, which 2 years ago, people may have not really understood the how important that is or the benefit of it. Now we're able to go in, easily and say, well, we've been doing this all along. It's not something that just popped up. So that kind of feels good that this is an area that we've been in and been pioneering a bit in certain areas. So we can go in there with full confidence of like, we were doing this before COVID. We've learned from COVID what may be some important features that we want to, add in or roll out. And we work a lot also talking to our users and customers to kind of get their feedback through like customer advisory boards.
Right. Okay. And so what do you find when you're looking at those customers in terms of like their need? Like the first thing that comes to mind when I think facilities management, I'm thinking cost, I'm thinking risk. Is that really the focus, or are there more like the other side of the equation on, how they could, you mentioned real estate folks, like is there more on like the revenue side, the revenue generative side?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes a lot of people or a lot of the business can come in through compliance. So government facilities, finance, medical, for instance, have certain compliance needs that they need to get integrated work management solution in place for, or workplace management solution, or some other type of technology that's going to help them. When you think of facility management, it's kind of a very broad term. There's everything from, how do I keep track or how do I collect work order requests, whatever it is, like there's the bathrooms out of order or whatnot, to, advanced maintenance management and predictive maintenance and all the things that we're getting to say of IoT devices. So I think, it kind of depends on, the size of the customer and where they're at. higher education's always as well been kind of a big player within the space, just because universities have campuses, and those campuses have a ton of different facilities. And some of them, as we know, older ones, they're aging, they're having to be retrofitted. So I think, with the type of solution, at first, a lot of times it's like they've got to automate all this. They've got to get more intelligent about it, so they kind of get ahead of the curve. And I'd say the other education would be like school boards and such, like as they have to plan out how much money they're going to ask for over like a 5 or 10 year period.
Right.
Being able to go back and look at their past history gives them a much better idea of what to expect.
Right.
And there's even players out there in the market that are doing, say, comparative data, being able to grab all that data of all their customers and saying someone like you in this type of market could expect to pay this much.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So when you're thinking about targeting these facility managers, through digital media, where are they? Like where are they living? Where are they getting their information from? Because it seems like it'd be a very diverse group. Like if you got commercial real estate folks, you got education folks. It seems like it's a pretty wide array. How do you think about that? Yeah,
and there's definitely not so much, but the kind of user persona behavior, but just different behavior in terms of how a knowledge worker versus kind of a field worker. So yeah, your facility managers and maintenance people might be much more in the field. They're less, sitting at a desktop. They're going to probably be on a mobile device a lot of times. Yeah. Whereas say your HR or maybe your IT worker is more of a knowledge worker, and they're searching a lot more. So you're probably able to get their attention a lot better, say through paid search, SEO, some targeting, say on LinkedIn. But I'd say with the field side, the people in the field, it's a little bit tougher. Maybe going after targeting them on some other social networks like Instagram or Facebook, just to kind of get awareness that there's a solution out there. They may not be in market yet, but you can kind of start getting some of that top of mind awareness with them. So that when they're ready, or maybe they make that suggestion to that team because they know they can't go out and probably don't have the skills to source a enterprise solution if that's what they need. Right. So we want to go in and do that. We're starting to get in more into like targeted accounts and some of those areas where we can get more focused on certain specific areas that we know we want to go after. And I think, with targeted accounts and an ABM strategy, then you've really got it broken down. You're going after much bigger companies, and you've got all three of those personas mapped out and kind of the messaging you want to go after. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's always a challenge, isn't it? When you have one of those personas being a recommender versus the actual decision maker, and trying to arm them with the information to take back to others. So do you have, maybe you can just talk to me a bit about like your thought leadership, or, what kind of enablement assets there are, like how do you think about that for equipping those folks that, are recommenders versus evaluators or even decision makers? Yeah, I mean, so we do some analysis of the funnel to see, what type of content is being consumed. I think a lot of times with, top of the funnel, it's educational. They're coming in to educate themselves on what it is. They don't have a history of it. So, they're going to be searching on broader terms and kind of consuming that higher level content. Towards the middle and bottom of the funnel, where it's probably someone that is experienced, right? They kind of know what they're looking for. They're searching on these more specific keywords. They've kind of got a feature set in mind that they need. Versus kind of having to be educated on that whole process. And also we do a lot on review sites and such, where we're trying to get that word of mouth recommendation and give them an option to kind of research us and compare us against the competitors before they come to the site. So currently I've been actually working on updating that, getting all of our products updated, listed correctly, making sure that the materials and assets we're putting out there are up to date and accurate and such. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing, the G2 Capterra world. It just such a great one, especially when there is an established market for it. So are you partnering with like the customer success team in order to get those reviews in, or how do you go about trying to augment the reviews? Like obviously there's the content side where you're, as you mentioned, but then also the review side. What are you doing there? So I'm very fortunate in that our customer marketing director is on my team,
Oh,
on
okay.
the marketing team, not on a separate team. So we're very aligned on the strategy of, and it's pretty simple. Let's get it updated, let's get it cleaned up,
Yeah.
let's kind of get all our ducks in a row, and then we're starting to push. So also working with Capterra and those guys, because they'll have incentive programs, finding out like how we can maybe kind of sweeten the deal a little bit for people to go and leave reviews. But also on the flip side of that is making sure they are going to review everything.
Yeah.
So I can tell you honestly, in the past, I've had it where we weren't aligned with the people, either customer support or account management or something. And, I was getting the reviews, and I would say, honestly, I can write something nice here, like, thank you for this. But if it was somebody saying like, hey, I don't like this feature, or I can't export my data or whatever, I would send that to them like, hey, one, we should reach out to this person. And two, let's, is this a feature we need to look at? Is this something you're hearing a lot of?
Right.
I've always said the challenge sometimes in digital marketing is I don't get to really, that's like one point of customer feedback I get, if I go to trade shows and user conferences, stuff like that, I get to hear them. But I think the real challenge sometimes digital marketing is we're looking at a lot of data and trends, but we're not always kind of hearing it straight from the horse's mouth.
Right. Yeah. And I want to get into that, your approach to data in a minute, but maybe just one thing that I was interested in was, as you're moving from that top of funnel to middle of funnel, because I imagine FMSystems, the sales cycle's not brief. Let's say it's not.
No. Yeah.
So how do you think about digital marketing supporting that middle of funnel where you've got a salesperson engaged, and now digital can provide air cover maybe, or what are you doing there?
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, we'll definitely do some display targeting if possible. We'll also maybe keep them in certain email threads and campaigns, depending again on kind of what their status is and such. We also, our BDR team is within marketing as well. So that's also good that we'll get feedback from them, and we're able to kind of show them, like, here's the campaign, here's the strategy. Right. As well as if they, especially say on search campaigns, if they say this isn't the right fit, give us a clue of like, okay, we might need to go and filter down a little bit, or tighten up how we're bidding and such. But yeah, for the most part, it's been nice to have that coordination and everybody on the same team, because it's less than having to kind of reach out to somebody else and schedule for their team. And I have to admit, even with COVID, I think sometimes it makes it tougher because everybody's trying to keep their team and their primary kind of affiliates engaged as much as they can and not be on screen 8 hours a day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, okay, great. Well, let's go back to the topic of data. And do you have, like, as marketing ops, do you have marketing ops that works with you, or how are you spelunking for the data that you get together to make those decisions?
I love that you said spelunking. Yeah, that's, it's funny. I was thinking about this earlier today. And one of the things I was thinking about also was like a Martech Marine Corps that could come in and quickly like analyze, deploy, and get everything running without disrupting everything.
Right.
So on data side, when I came in, we did have some challenges in terms of how we were tracking on our website and how we were recording conversions and how we were really segmenting conversions, right? So not just having everything be a goal. So instead, like saying, okay, what are our hard conversions? What are our soft conversions? Let's assign values to them. Let's be able to use that in how we're going to analyze the data and give it some weight. Because I think that's another challenge. Like, people set up goals and they might even be, say, the right goals, but it might be, for instance, is someone scheduling a demo better than somebody hitting a contact us form? Maybe by 10% or $20 or whatever you want to assign to it. So, and then a lot of it also was kind of cleaning house of some of the back end tagging so that the data was more accurate. So I think sometimes that's always a challenge coming in, is you don't have a history and you start asking those prying questions, you do some audits and you're like, I don't know how accurate this is. But the other thing I've been doing is also setting up like Google Data Studio for some of the kind of easy stuff
Mm,
like Google Analytics and Google Ads that I can, for zero investment other than time and resources, go ahead and get some dashboards built, go ahead and get some ability for people to get some transparency to say like, okay, here's how people are coming in, here's the content they're consuming, here's the type of events and maybe content relationships,
right.
and really not give them, a lot of the technical stuff like bounce rate and all that, because, it's bounce rate, I don't know, it's the, it's maybe, I guess, to go back to caving, it's like the damn bats that are in the cave sometimes that make you want to get out of there.
Yeah.
But in reality, like it's hard to really measure what it is, because for instance, I would have high bounce rates on my paid search pages because I only gave them one option, and that's to convert or not convert.
Right.
So if I only convert at say 5 to 8% or maybe 10%,
Yeah.
then I'm gonna have like a 75, 80% bounce rate. But my question is, how do I optimize that traffic that gets there, and how do I, best spend my money to get the right people there that will convert?
Right.
Not so much how do I lower bounce rate. And I think the other challenges have been the way Google has changed stuff. Like it's some of the vanity metrics. Sometimes I feel like they're hard to keep track of because
Mm,
they're changing the way they're counting stuff, or the way they want to measure things. So I try to make sure that the reports and dashboards, like if we can filter that down to maybe a specific group,
yeah.
maybe it's a set of pages by product and the behavior on those. Maybe it's traffic source, how is organic search coming in and looking at our stuff?
Right.
How are they behaving? Because I think that's the other challenge sometimes when people throw web data up there. It's huge, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
we had like 45,000 visitors last month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now let's break 45,000 down about 20
Right.
different ways. Instead, I
Right.
think it really needs to be like, we increased organic search traffic, we increased, these type of things. And with that increase, we did see a bump in engagement.
Right.
And then even break it down like a level from there, like, kind of the soft conversions versus the hard conversions.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So starting back at the top on data, like how did you, you coming in a couple months back, how did you make that linkage between all of these metrics and back to like corporate goals? Like what was that process like, and what numbers do you look at? Like, are you looking at sort of mid funnel SQLs, SQAs, or are you trying to connect as much as possible to revenue or LTV, or what do you see as being like the ultimate linkage back to, or is there an ultimate linkage back to corporate goals?
Yeah. I'd say, but the first thing I usually do is like come in and create like a tech stack overlay of just where all the data points are, all
Right.
the websites, what the drivers are, right, what channels, just so we kind of have a map. Because I know it can get confusing with people, because then they'll be like, well, I have this affiliate site, we have this user conference site, we have the main website, we have a sports site, we have this. And so it's easier sometimes to always refer back to that. And then I'll also put, again, at a very high level, like, lead comes in, it's going to hit HubSpot, then it goes to Salesforce, then it's going to go out to a BDR, and kind of what the basic flow is. Now, of course, that
Right.
can change again, depending on it. And then I kind of do a little bit of an audit. Usually I'll start with like paid search, because it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit smaller data set, to see how those have been performing.
Right.
And then I kind of look at it like from 3 data sources. I'll look at the Google Ads data. I'll look at what the website and Google Analytics data is, and then I'll look at the CRM data, to make sure we're not like losing any data in that process, as well as how does that then track through. Ideally, yes. I mean, I want to, especially on anything I've got a hard spend on, like ad spend, I want to be able to say, here's how much I spent, here's how much opportunity we got, here's how much pipeline, and here's how much we won. Now, you brought up a great point of it can take 90 days to 9 months to maybe even longer, depending on the type of sale and the institution, for that lead to go from capture to close.
Right.
So in the past, I've done a couple different strategies where, even though, so I mean, we live in a quarter by quarter basis, so
Right.
fine, let's look at one cohort that's basically leads captured and leads that closed in that quarter. But then I'll do like a two quarters trailing.
Right.
Because I know there's a good percentage of those leads that are not going to close, especially say the leads I got in the last month of the quarter, right? They haven't had time to really mature and close.
Right.
And I found that was great, because that gave us a much better view of how these campaigns are performing. At first, we were doing it just quarter to quarter and quarter over quarter. And I have to admit, it took a ton. It took a ton of
Yeah.
time. It was really having to go and do like quarter slices
Right.
and pulling that all into like a big spreadsheet and having to kind of make sense of it in order to kind of build it out. In fact, that's something I'd love. So we don't have a marketing ops. It's myself and my digital marketing manager. But
Yeah.
ideally, that's what I would love, say, within a marketing ops, like starting to build some more sophisticated historical analysis. So we could say, how did things behave in a certain period of time? But we know there's a residual effect, and how much is that? Because I think that's really what can help you look at budgeting and prioritizing down the road.
Right.
If you look at it just in that small time frame, you might be like, we didn't really get our money off of it. Then like
Yeah.
2 deals come through that are half of what you spent,
Right.
and now you got a positive ROI on it instead of
Yeah.
a negative. So.
Right. Well, and you're a SaaS business too, so I imagine there's some of that is like directing towards existing customers for upsell and for retention.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's and so the other challenge I think within a lot of the reporting is it's not always going to give you like ARR versus the billings for a given year, and then okay, we know the average SaaS life cycle or lifetime is about 4.5 years, industry average. I've even done it where we've gone back and looked at our data and figured out sometimes, like I've worked at some companies who had like 6-7 years with like say a 93% retention rate.
Right.
And so I've even done that where I've mapped out saying, here's industry's average of 4.5 years, I think like 75% retention rate. Here's ours, we're this much higher. So this is how much real ROI we should expect, right? Given we know usually the first year we've got this billing and revenue number that we can look at, and we're saying this should be performing over the next 6.5 years at this rate.
Right.
And I think that helps out a lot too, because I think especially if like paid search, especially in competitive markets, people see a big number and they expect to see just this quick return.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's kind of like SEO. It's like, you're getting the attention of someone that's asking a question and competing against a bunch of other people on this, global market.
Right.
And, everybody types it in differently and has different behavior to a certain aspect. And is at a different point in their buyer journey. So, how do we best do that without creating 10,000 pages and these confusing campaigns? And I think that's the other thing I've seen sometimes too, is segmentation is a real challenge, because like if you try to do too much, it can be like the beast that overwhelms you and you can't make sense of the data, right? Because it's like just too many points. And or again, you're going to need like more resources. You're going to need like 3 data analysts sitting over here making sense of all of it.
Right. Exactly. So as you're building out like that plan with the budget, how do you keep space for experimentation, for fun, for discovery? How do you do that without it? Like we can all be too much of a servant to the numbers, and well, we're winning here, so let's dump everything there. How do you keep that experimentation going?
I guess I kind of plan for it within the budget. So sometimes, like for instance, I've had to set up, say, like G2 and Capterra, the paid side of it,
right?
Which is the Capterra is more like a PPC.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones are more like fixed price. So that's more of a let's just get in and get our best look here and see what kind of comes through.
Right.
On Capterra, for instance, I was able to go in there and experiment with landing pages. I was still going to spend so much anyway. And say the first month and a half, I don't have any data anyway. So I have to spend something to get some data back. So I usually try to at least have that like first data gathering period is not so much experimentation, but like, okay, let's see if our original hypotheses came true, say on landing page or ad or combination thereof.
Right.
And then, typically if I see something not converting at a certain level, for instance, if I'm getting a lot of clicks to a landing page, if the landing page is not converting, then I need to go back and look at the landing page and maybe run an experiment there, push the call to action up a little bit more, or, maybe tune down if I got too much stuff popping up at them. In fact, I was looking at a page the other day where we have a sticky form popping up on the form that's already on the page. I'm like, let's suppress that. We've already got it there. And then of course, mobile, right? How does this look on mobile? We want to have all these, like, let's keep reminding them that there's an opportunity to talk to us and engage, but how much is kind of overwhelming and kind of ruins the user experience. Like maybe they are getting into the content and like, oh, this is good, it's educating me. They're not really ready to fill out a form or demo or all that, but they're taking another step and engaging.
Right. Okay, great. Well, this has been a great conversation. Really, I've really enjoyed it. But I do want to leave you with one more question, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
So, tell me what you would do. What would be your advice to someone that's looking to restart or to start their digital marketing strategy? Like, maybe they've done some playing around with Google Ads. Maybe they've done a little bit of digital display, or maybe they've done nothing. What would be your toolkit that you would break out for them, or you'd suggest to them to get started on building out a digital marketing plan?
I mean, so the first thing, kind of going back to a point you made earlier, like aligning to corporate goals. So I would say the first question, and I even did this back when I was just say building websites, was how does this support the corporate goals
Yeah,
within our space? Um, and so of course it's important that like the corporate goals have some specifics in them.
right.
If they're going to be very broad, then really anything I do can kind of align the corporate goals. So if your corporate goals are like, we want to grow the company by this much um, uh, this quarter, if you kind of sometimes you can start with that, like whether revenue or growth of customer number, kind of work your way backwards sometimes and do the reverse engineering, knowing that you got to generate a certain amount of leads that convert to opportunities that convert to customers.
Right.
So sometimes that can help you kind of get an idea of like, okay, this is how much effort we have to do. Now, that's total effort. Then from a digital standpoint, I know events marketing is going to do some of this. I know, content and PR and other things going to draw people in. How much do we think we're going to do? Especially say, I think on lead generation, because digital does play like a big role in that.
Right.
And then, from paid search and all that, it's more delicate in terms of, what's your bid strategy and how you're really going to go out and get it. I mean, we've seen Google just recently kind of get rid of broad match modifier.
Right.
I've seen some strategies, and I'm even thinking of some where it's like I just go after like exact match and that's it. And
Yeah.
then I test with broader phrase, whatever they're going to use now. I do think like paid search, especially, like there is a tremendous opportunity to waste a lot of money,
Right.
because basically if you go out there with the strategy of like just hit all these keywords up among these 3 match types, and you don't really, again, it becomes complicated. Like, have I got them negative out of each one so that I'm not paying a higher bid type?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, it gets back into segmentation as well. Like how many different audiences I have, what's important to them? Do I have certain keywords I can kind of group and have a page specific to them?
Right.
And then, I think the biggest mistake I also see people making is just doing paid search to their home page. Unless like you just got a kick butt site.
Right.
Clean and simple. And I think, for certain things like, e-commerce and some consumer stuff, it can work. I think for B2B, I don't want to make my user kind of have to hunt and peck off the home page. So if they're looking specific on a space management solution, I want them to paste it, or a page that talks about space management. They can find out more details than the other stuff, but at least it's going to be relevant to what they're looking for.
Right.
But the plan, I think also it has to really work with like your team. Like what is the customer marketing person's responsibility? How much are they going to cross-sell, upsell? How much lead gen do you have to do? And we're just actually starting to do that right now, and it's been fun because one, I get to learn more about the different programs that my team members are doing, and then we can brainstorm on like, okay, where do we fit, or where do we feel like digital is going to fit into this?
Right. That's great. Well, I appreciate the advice on that. So, Brian, really enjoyed this chance to catch up and to connect and to hear your thoughts on digital marketing. So very much appreciate it.
Thanks, Peter. It was great talking to you.
Absolutely.